Hello, okay. Now, the 2023 Road Freight Small Medium Enterprises Summit, SME, held last week, was aimed at addressing the country's poor road safety. The use of fleet management services and digital platforms highlighted as effective tools which could benefit SMEs in road freight. Join me now further to unpack the outcomes of this summit is Mark Makhubalo, Chairperson of the Road Freight SME Summit Advisory Council and the convener of that summit, Florence. Musundwa. Florence and Mark, welcome to today. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thank you.
Thank you very much for having us.
So let me start with you. Convener, how was the summit?
It was an absolute success from our objective. Our objective was to start really convening the industry to talk around critical success factors for SME transporters. And we managed to do that with the support of industry associations, a couple of sponsors that are critical. And we convened close to 200
operators or truck owners?
Truck owners, including the ecosystem. So there were around about 200 people within the room. And we had very in-depth conversations around what needs to happen, what hasn't happened, and how the platform could become a place where we could put some agenda setting and make sure that things happen for SMEs.
Okay, so this was the inaugural one. There will be a 2024, 25, 26 edition.
We're here for the next 10 years and plus.
Okay, great. Mark, you're an operator, you're a truck owner. How did you find the summit?
Oh, loved it. Very informative. We had compliance guys there who looked at the regulations. We had government there, Department of Trade and Industry was there. And it was important for us. Real life scenarios were really displayed. And I think for us, that was the most important thing as a transporter.
Yeah. Why the summit, Florence? Why the need for such a summit?
Because my friends who are truck owners kept on saying to me, Florence, you're so great in putting together industry. We need one for us to talk about the legitimizing this particular.
So there was a need that was identified
by the
SME sector.
Yes. And personally, I've done some work in road freight. So part of it having been mentoring women entrepreneurs that are transporters. So I picked up that there is a need, but I have to say it came strictly from the likes of Mark, giving me a mandate in inverted commas to say it's important for us to not just focus on SMEs and what matters to us, what we need to know, and where can we go to get help, and how do we form a network amongst ourselves.
How big is the SME, the SME freight sector?
Very big. It's, I mean, if you look at the summit itself, about 90%, say 80 to 90% of the people that were there were SMEs. But when you look at it from a category point of view, you've got probably over 100,000, registrations per year, and that's CIPC of people who are registering to be transporters.
And they would own anything from one truck to...
So they own, 100%. So they own between, say, one truck to, say, 5, that's your micro. Then you've got between, say, call it 5 to about 100, or maybe 20 to 100 we would call SME. Space. So
where's the cutoff for an SME freight? Is it 1,000 trucks?
No, I think above 250, you're now very big.
When you go beyond 250, you're becoming very
large.
Okay, Mark, what are the biggest challenges you guys are facing in the SME sector? I'm asking this because when we interview other small enterprises, entrepreneurs, besides complaining about access to capital, lack of favorable terms in terms of loans or grants, and also government support is lacking, government paying lip service to the importance of small, medium enterprises. But when it comes to paying small business, they take a long time to the point where some businesses have to close shop. So what are your biggest challenges as a freight SME sector?
I think the big one for us is really the idea of the legitimizing or legitimacy around the industry. So you for example, do cross-border. So for you to go from one place to another, you've got certain requirements here that are different in South Africa compared to Mozambique. Different from here compared to Angola. And that on its own causes so much of a challenge for us. Then you also have fuel costs. I mean, the biggest driver, about 40 to 45% of our, call it revenue, biggest cost factor there to our revenue is fuel. And unfortunately, you've got no, call it rebates or any form of assistance in that regard. And if you've got a truck and you don't have fuel, you're not going anywhere.
And if you're a small operator and you have to spend several days at the border post, either in Libombo into Mozambique, from Komati Port to Mozambique, or Bike Bridge, it's a loss for you.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. So would you welcome a regional integrated way of handling SME? You said you want to legitimize yourselves as a sector, therefore you could then lobby or make sure that governments of the region look at you differently.
Yes.
Is that what you would like to see?
That's exactly what we want to see. So we definitely need DTI's involvement in the space because they, to a certain extent, also monitor and create these transport codes. And that's very important for us from a charter point of view. But we also need Department of Transport itself to participate in creating that way. For example, I don't need to stand for 5 days to get to Mozambique, or I don't need to stand in Mozambique because there's trade agreements between Mozambique and South Africa that will create efficiency. And
technology should play a role in facilitating. There was a word digital that I mentioned in terms of the introduction. Florence, you mentioned outcomes and what came out. You said it was a successful one, not just in terms of attendance, but also in terms of what came out of it.
Yes, and the word, when you mention technology, I think there's a lot of solutions that are already in the market. And some of these solutions, whether you call them telematics, whether you call them scanning at borders, they are being manufactured or being brought by small players as well in the market. And they're not finding expression because there's bigger companies that are getting the large share of the transporters themselves. So as part of the outcomes going forward is we would also be creating as part of the platform these SMEs that are suppliers to transporters, such as telematics or transport management systems, whether it's driver management systems, in whatever form where technology plays a very big role in running a trucking business.
So was this something that was discussed at the summit?
Yes, it was something that was discussed because it is a need. We cannot deny that automation is important. We cannot deny the importance of data analytics and the role that it plays, especially for truckers, for you to know where you are, where your truck is. It's everything concerning the truck, right at the palm of your hand, for you to be able to plan ahead also for your business. It's very critical. So that was one of the conversations that were had, and actually on the conversation around cross-border.
Yes.
Very critical. Another important thing, which I think for the SMEs, and speaking about the outcomes, and we have to really think about how we can support them in unlocking certain opportunities where they could be afforded funding for them to adopt these technologies.
Is funding a big problem, Mark?
Absolutely. One truck.
Tell us more.
One truck, just the horse, is about 3 million rand. To buy the trailer, depending on the trailer that you want, is near between, say, 700 and 1 million rand. So to have a truck and trailer, you need 4 million rand if you're going to buy them outright. If you're going to fund them, you also need the guarantee of loads. And that's where the problem comes in now. Because if you're going to sit, for example, going to Mozambique, the contract will be cancelled sooner or later because you're not delivering on time. And then you've got a truck that you can't afford. And hence you see a lot of auctioneers busy auctioning trucks, and those trucks belong to SMEs. Because the idea behind it is that you're not as big as the next guy, and the guy comes and picks up your truck for next to nothing because you just can't afford it.
Is it possible to guarantee loads?
Not in the industry. It's very difficult. If you look, for example, in the mining sector, they're not giving actual contracts, they're giving purchase orders these days. And the idea behind it is that they're also managing their cash flows. So they're saying, we don't want to commit to you for 5 years because we don't know what's going to happen in 5 years. So what we're going to do for you is just give you a purchase order.
What's the ideal solution in your view as a trucker?
I think government, private sector need to come together. And if you've got an allocation of 5,000 tons, for example, 1,000 tons could be allocated to an SME, and you could have some form of a system.
A similar approach to what government said about women business, to say 30% of procurement in government must go to women-owned businesses.
Yes.
Something similar to
that. Or the mining charter, where it says like 27%.
Or the mining charter.
Correct.
So you could have that. Currently, there's nothing like that
Not at
in
all.
the transport in the transport charter.
Yes. And those are the discussions that we are now, as a body as well as a summit, participating in.
Yeah, but do you find that even local harbours, I mean, we've mentioned cross-border quite a bit, but there's Richards Bay, I mean, there's Durban Harbour. I mean, you drive down the N3 highway, you're meeting truck after truck.
Yes.
There's also long waiting periods, I guess, and that affects your business.
Yes, so I do a lot of Pongola, which is to Richards Bay, that route. The road is terrible. Even if you take the N3, you're going to stand there for close to 3 days to offload. And that on its own is a complete disaster in a sense of managing efficiency.
You guys should contribute to road safety.
Yes.
Oh,
And you should
definitely.
also contribute somehow with the infrastructure, maybe as part of your social corporate social responsibility. Because, I mean, you see the condition of the roads,
Yes.
and we've seen where trucks sometimes have been involved in terrible accidents. You mentioned Pongola. We know those 20-odd children, school children who died
Yes.
when that truck lost control and hit that bakkie
Absolutely.
just last year. So I'm saying you can contribute. But I mean,
Yes.
I'm speaking broadly as an industry.
Yes.
I know we're talking about SME sector, but as part of that, you could find a way of making it safer.
Very true. And part of the outcomes, or what we will be focusing on, is in 2024, we're going to be running a campaign where we're going to be getting SMEs sign up on the campaign to host safety days, safety campaigns within their organization and around their community. Because the onus is also on us to participate. I'm saying us because I identify as a trucker in this moment. It's part of the things that we're going to be doing in talking about contributing to road safety. As we're just not going to sit on the sidelines, we're going to then go, as much as you get your RTMCs doing their various road safety or government doing various road safety activities, we think it's very important that we cultivate that road safety culture in the SME operators, because then they can host safety campaigns, they can do driver, trainer, just build a culture of road safety within your organization.
And encourage the owners like Mark to
Yeah.
make sure that the truck is always roadworthy.
Yes.
The tires are in the right condition.
Yeah.
And I don't know how much of that the SME is managing, Mark. Roadworthiness?
Roadworthiness, it's a must. You've got government intervention in that sense in making sure that your truck is roadworthy. What government could do, perhaps, is assist in at least reducing that price for the smaller guys. A truck on its own and trailer costs between 15 to, say, 22,000 Rand to have your truck licensed. For an SME, that's very expensive. And remember, if you've got a trailer, you've got a twin bin, you have to license both bins. It's an expensive exercise. If we could get some leniency, perhaps, for an SME or the guy who has a truck between 1 and 10, that can really help.
Yeah. What are your views about foreign drivers in South Africa? We've seen a lot of violence recently. We've seen Moe River Plaza has become famous, that Moe River area, for blockages by truckers.
Yes.
Your mates in the industry, because they are protesting against the companies using a foreign driver. What's your view, Mark?
Look, there's a mixed view. We talked about it in the summit.
Okay.
So there is the idea that foreign drivers are taking the local drivers, call it space. But as a trucker, we believe that everyone has got an opportunity, be it a foreign or a local person. If you've got the set of skills, you should be given an opportunity to house them.
Yeah, just educate me a bit, because my mind says if you are a trucking company that's in Zambia and you are a Zambian company, you're going to use a Zambian driver to drive all the way if you're going to come in and pick up your goods for your client, for whoever, from Durban or Richards Bay. That just goes without saying.
Yeah.
But I think where the problem lies is if you are a Zambian driver and you come into South Africa and you work for a South African company, that's where the tensions have been. Am I correct?
Absolutely. So remember, by law, what's supposed to happen is you're supposed to drive to South Africa as a Zambian. You get to South Africa, you offload, you actually go back then to Zambia as a foreign driver. So that's ideally what's supposed to happen.
Okay.
But what happens is you've got Zambian drivers who are now stationed in South Africa. Now, because of the fact that, there's a lot of intervention there, government and that, the guy still has a set of skills to drive. He has a family here and he's supposed to work. And those guys come and work. And unfortunately...
Did the summit come up with some possible solutions for this one?
Not
Go
yet.
Not yet, yeah?
Yes, because it's so nuanced.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the inaugural.
Yeah.
And some of these things, some of the topics are hot.
Yes.
And
And you
very
can't run away
nuanced.
from the hot topics.
But what I say we have achieved, or what we have achieved, is we are taking the conversations further now.
Yeah.
There's various associations and industry bodies that are already on top of these conversations. And what was very critical for us was for them to come and share information as to how far are these
And I think it's important. The
conversations.
reason I'm raising this, because you're a small sector, SME, and you get impacted by all these things that sometimes are outside your control, including this issue, like the technological issue. The border is not of your making, but SARS and immigration and customs, they need to sort it out. But it will impact you, impacts your business. Was government in the room last week?
Yes, we had good support from DOT. So we had the DDG from Transport and Integrated Transport Department and their team. We had Department of Small Business as well. from the DG's office. So they participated, they did presentations, and they are also part of the people we're having conversations as to how does this voice of the SME become part of the policy formation.
Yeah, the road freight SME sector is an important sector. I mean, if there's any sector of the economy that can help us a lot, we have no choice. But you guys don't like rail, Mark.
We don't, because then we make more
You
money.
should complement each other. You should complement each other in this country. I know Transnet's headaches are not your headaches, but you should complement each other. Okay, from the SME Summit Advisory Council, there will be more editions in future.
Yes.
This was you debuted this one. This was an inaugural one.
Yes.
And if you just want parting remarks, what is the best way forward for you after the summit now? What should be next?
So the best now is we're workshopping. So after summit, we've got that intellect. Now we workshop and we start getting to the ground and talking real issues. A summit is often timed. You've got an hour to discuss. But now we're getting down to it. We're understanding the actual business at hand. And that's important for us. And we feel in the next summit, we will report back as a council to say this is what we've achieved and take it from there.
Yeah, and Mark, as you get along between now and the next summit, keep us informed in the media. Some of these workshops might be interesting for us to cover.
Yes.
Thank you
very much, Florence. And Mark, that's Mark Makhubalo, the chairperson of the Road Freight SME Summit Advisory Council and the convener of that Road Freight SME Advisory Committee, Florence. So we are very grateful for you and good luck. All the best. Florence says she's not a trucker, but she speaks like a trucker now.